being blissfully dissatisfied, right? So I'm happy with what I have, but I'm dissatisfied that I'm not ultimately to where I want to be, right? And
Right.
it's the idea of, and this is his too, it's the idea that, one day, whether you believe in heaven or whatever you believe in, and I don't care, it's not really that's not really what the nature of this is, but at some point I'll be in heaven and God reveals a mirror for me to meet the man that I could have been.
Right.
And how's that meeting go? Like, am I going to be happy because like I'm at that level, or am I going to be sad because I didn't push it the way I should have pushed it, right? So
Hmm. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on another podcast here. We've got Nathan Dover, myself, Nick Mombercat, and our guest, Brent Swatuk. He's a CLU, CHS, and the Advanced Case Consultant for Equitable Life. We're super pumped to have him on the podcast. And Brent, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
so yeah, I mean, where to start, right? 47, live just north of Toronto. I pretty much I live in a small town called Brent, although now I'm not really on the outskirts. Been trying to get my wife to leave, but it's like fighting a non-winning battle. Um, so I started in the insurance business 25 years ago. I've been, blessed, I guess, to make it 25 years. That's pretty awesome feat in any sort of industry. I kind of fell into it backwards, very much like most people. So I never intended to come in the business. Although the interesting thing is, I'm second generation in the business. So my father was
Okay.
actually an insurance advisor prior to me becoming one. Grew up as my father, but never understood the insurance business. Right? I knew he was gone a lot. I knew he sold stuff, but I never really understood the business itself. Um, didn't have any intention to come in the business, but one fateful day, right? Like I was working somewhere, didn't like something that went down, and called my dad and said, that insurance gig thing, how does one actually get into that, right? And figure out if they should be doing that. And he said, oh, you know what? There's this test you take, and I'll introduce you to my manager. And, that was it. I went, took the test. They said, you know what? You show high aptitude for being able to do the job. You got into the job. It's funny. The place that I was working at, I asked to actually be moved out of the office and onto the delivery truck, so that way I could actually study. So I used to we were supposed to share off the driving duties, and I said to the guy, I go, no, 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 you're going to drive all the time because I need to study because I need to get out of here, right? And so like literally, and neither one of you are I've been in the business long enough, but the old study books used to have like a little red like plastic viewfinder, so it would ask questions and then you'd scan this like red thing with this viewfinder. So I'm on the truck like shaking and looking up answers, you
Nice.
know so the good thing is I passed, and then I get into the business, and it's like I have no clue what I'm doing, right? I just come in, and it's been an interesting role ever since. But first meeting I ever did, swear to God, Nick, swear to God, Nathan, I'm looking right at my manager and I'm talking, but I'm talking to the clients across from us. Like I couldn't look them in the face, right? Now fast forward 25 years, I get up in front of like what not during COVID, but I get up in front of like I've been up in front of like hundreds of people and given talks, right? But like that first meeting, absolute train wreck. Like looked at him the entire time, right? Can't believe we actually got to the bottom line and actually closed insurance in that meeting. So yeah, it's been a fun ride though, 25 years.
Nice. That goes on, Nathan. I think we chat quite a bit and go like, you know, some of the apprehension in the early years is like, oh no, they're going to be judging me, the prospect or client or whatever. And I've told Nathan, it's like they don't know what you're supposed to say, so you can't really screw it up so much. And you proved it there in your first meeting. That's pretty cool, and a great intro to how you got in the industry. I think all three of us tripped into it by someone or just a pain. Nathan, maybe you could share your quick story on how you got into it. I think that would be curious to
Yeah.
tie it in here.
Honestly, it was pretty similar to Brent's story. Actually, I feel like we kind of relate a little bit on that way. That just in our past job, I guess stuff wasn't really working out, and just decided. Well, I guess I had talked to you, Nick, probably a year prior to that, before I made the move, and we just kind of talked back and forth. Like, wasn't really sure if I was going to be doing that, but then as time went on, it kind of got a little bit more exciting to me. I started doing some research on it, realized how great of a business it was to be in. So that's kind of when I jumped ship and never looked back. It's been a lot of fun so far. I've had a few client meetings myself so far, and yeah, I was definitely nervous, but I've had a couple with Nick too, which kind of helps a little bit. But like Nick said, it's just going to take some time, and yeah, eventually just be smooth sailing.
Yeah, well, I don't know that it's ever in our heads. I don't know that it's ever smooth sailing because we're the winds change, right? The seasons change. We reach harshness. It's funny. They say never pray for easy times because you'll never grow in easy times, right? And so, the amount of growth that you're going to go through now is just incredible, right? And the only thing I'll say to you is, if my wife was here, she'd laugh because she remembers this and reminds me of it now that I'm starting to actually get it. But when I was your age and I was in the business, I used to say to her, if I only had some gray hair on the side of my head, people would take me much more serious, right?
Right.
So I would say to you, don't go wishing the gray hairs in because they're going to come. And then you'll end up with this like funky streak that goes through the front of your head.
I got you, brother. Or in your beard already.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, seriously, I didn't think this was going to happen this soon. But kids help with that too. So
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, it's different being young in this industry. There's not too many people that I know around my age that are in it. So just from the people that I've talked to anyways and seen, seems to be like kind of like an older generation of industry for sure. So it's kind of interesting to see how everyone else reacts and takes it. So
Yeah, it's a stewardship, man. If you commit, listen, unfortunately, this business, it's not an easy business. It's a misunderstood business. And we've had people in the past that weren't fit for the business, but man, they sure could sell, right? And what they sold, some of it was good, some of it, not so good, right? But such a noble profession. Think about what we do, right? People, like it's a lonely business, and people go out and they learn about people and they help them, and we're there in their times of real need, right? Like I have seen massive death checks get paid out. I've seen small death checks get paid out that were even more important to families than massive death checks, right? And so if you can survive the apprenticeship period and you can really get to know your market and really get curious about people, first one, it's a very rewarding career. But secondly, it's just what we do is so incredibly important for society and for our communities because we flood those communities with checks at the exact right time, alleviating the social system, alleviating people's worries. And I know that sounds so damn preachy, and I would have hated to hear that when I was your age, but the more I've been in the business, the more romantic I've become about the business because I've got to see, you know, like I've got to see just these miraculous events that happen, and it's incredible, and kudos for you for, like, you're the future, man. Like I'm 47 and I'm a dinosaur with 25 years behind me, right? Like, so at your age, there's nothing but up from here. So, take the time to invest in yourself. And afterwards, we can jump offline. I can give you, like, I built a course around and I built some knowledge around how do you take somebody from here to here? Because I wasn't sure if my son would come in this business. And honestly, I look at him and I'm like, he could still come in one day, right? Like he's doing his thing. But, you have such an opportunity and I'm jealous.
I appreciate that. It's good words of encouragement for sure. And I really do appreciate that. Yeah, I'd love to chat sometime even after this just to be able to kind of learn even more about you. And one thing I wanted to ask as well is, like, I know we kind of talked a little bit before this about you doing some online training and just talking to people, whether it be virtually or whether it be in front of them before COVID. Like, how did you get used to that? Like, is this your first official podcast as well? I'd like to ask that. Just we're kind of curious just to see how you became such a good speaker and comfortable talking to all these people online.
So good's an opinion. I don't take compliments very well. You'll learn this about me. I laugh. I shared with you, like, you're interviewing interesting people, and I said to my wife, I go, I don't know what we're going to talk about because I think I'm the least interesting person in Canada. But that aside, is it my first official podcast? Yes.
Yeah.
For podcasting, it is. I've done YouTube interviews with people that were only set in YouTube, right? So I've done a fair amount of YouTube work, which is good. I have my own YouTube channel, but I was using it for specific means. Now you'll start to see content probably move forward that I intend to actually reside there. And I, like, camera's a weird thing, but I guess about 15 years ago, I did a TV show with some financial advisor who had this TV show up in like just north of us. And you know, I was okay with it because I was like, hey, this isn't in my community. Yeah, I could go do that, no problems. Not remembering that we had, like at the time, I had clients up that way. So they were like, hey, you're on local TV, right? And it was like, oh yeah, I guess so, right? So you know, why did I do it? I did it because number one, I want to launch a podcast myself to interview interesting people like yourselves, because I think there's some great, you know, I think advisors, we're missing that touch in community. And so this was just a really great opportunity. I know Nick a bit. I wouldn't say that we're like long-term friends that we've known each other forever, but
It's too bad.
yeah, you know what? Like we've connected live at a conference, and then I was fortunate enough to have Nick come through the course that we built, and we've just developed a mutual respect and friendship for each other. So when asked by Nick, you know, I definitely jump in with both feet.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Great to have you.
Yeah, that's a very interesting background. A lot of us listen to podcasts, and I presume with your interest in launching one and jumping on this today that you probably do. I'm sure you have a handful that you lean on. I'm just curious, what are those, maybe the top three that you kind of frequent on a weekly or bi-weekly basis?
So very big fan of the Ed Milet show. Really, really cool guy. He just actually dropped one with Anthony Robbins. So I mean,
wow, cool.
Yeah, totally. If you know what, hop onto that one. It's well worth a listen. So I'm in this business, so I'm a bit of a nerd on it, and I like Jason Pereira's financial planning for business owners. I'm sorry if that made a noise. I'm going to close my calendar. So you know, Jason Pereira put together a really good thing, a really good podcast. It's meant for business owners. It's not meant for financial planners, but the nice thing is he interviews like real people that have actually done the job. So it's not a lot of head officey like theory type stuff. I realize like I'm a head officey guy, so like I shouldn't be like slamming us, right? But nothing worse than getting in front of somebody that you know hasn't actually engaged a client and actually moved something forward with a client. And you can tell usually by, if you've been doing the job, you can tell by some of the nuances or some of the little like things that they say, or you just know that stuff's not going to work, right? So I really like his because it's a bunch of experts that he brings on. He has a very thoughtful and thorough approach to things. So I'm very much a fan of that one. I'll give you something non-leadership or business related. I like Smartless. I don't know if you know Smartless.
Nice. Yeah.
But you know, I have a very sarcastic sense of humor as you get to know me. So Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean, I can't think of what his last name.
Hayes, is it?
Sean Hayes. Yeah.
Yeah.
They bring on these guests and interview them, and it's just hilarious, right? Like,
yeah. The Ricky Gervais episodes are just too much. Like, yeah. They all are. They're great. Those guys are comical. It's funny. All three of those are on my list too, so that's interesting. But
that's great.
Yeah, cool. You know, one thing that stuck with me that you said when I was on your course, you had said we need to raise our level of leadership in what we do or in certain areas of our life. And I think that's a pretty powerful statement. And I'm not sure where you got that from, but, you know, part of that maybe raising our level of leadership in certain areas comes from the books we read. And I know that to be true for myself. So are you an avid reader or not so much?
Oh, no, I'm a ferocious reader. I think avid is probably below the level where I'm at.
Okay.
Anybody that knows me knows that I've always got books, and then I've got books in the queue. And right. I'm sure it drives my wife crazy because I don't use our Amazon account. My wife is the best. Like, she's absolutely the best partner I could have landed with in my life. It was total fluke. But I'll be driving around and I'll hear somebody mention like some obscure book, and I'll be like, hey, here's a book. Can you order it for me?
Right.
And like she'll just like, or I'll look it up and I'll text it to her and I'll be like, hey, can you order for this, please? Right. And then it magically appears. And I don't know how that whole Amazon thing works.
Nice.
But raising your level of leadership, actually, our boy Nathan has the secret right above him. Top shelf, first book. It happens to be right in front of me.
Oh, look at this. Nice.
Which is 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. It actually comes from there. So like we hear stuff, like our brain will only take in what it's really searching for, right? And I came to this book late, and it was funny. I was thinking about buying that book, and I walked past it. I saw it, and I walked past it, and I was just getting ready to get on a flight. I don't remember where I was going to speak, but I was going somewhere to speak, and I was looking for a book to take with me. And my daughter comes walking up, my youngest daughter, and she goes, "Yeah, that looks like a book you would read." And she points right to a 21-year review. So I was like browsing the other, and so that said to me, okay, you know what? That's like the universe kind of knocking on the door and saying, you're meant to read that book. So I read that book, and there's a couple laws in there that I really plucked out that I was looking for, right? And one of them was the law of leadership, which I think might be number 4 in the book, okay? And it basically says, and I this is where I think my training all went offside. I was taught to be all things to all people. There's another book which I'm reaching for. I've got stacks of books in front of me because I read stuff with a different lens than most people. So I'm very specific in what I'm looking for. I know what I'm looking for. And when you know what you're looking for, you learn in a completely different fashion. You also know what you're not going to go spend your time trying to learn. So one of the books that I read is called The One Thing, which I think that's probably got some glare, but anyways, The One Thing by Gary Keller, J. Paperzan. And I didn't know I was going to read this book. Somebody referred it. I opened it up, and one of my favorite proverbs that Anthony Robbins said a way long ago was, the fox that chases 2 rabbits soon starves to death, meaning that you have to keep your eye focused on one thing. You have to keep your mind focused on one thing. And so in John Maxwell's book, it talks about the fact that in order to raise up your level of influence, to raise up your level of leadership, you need to have clear and defined focus, right? Like you have to be focused on something, and then you have to commit fully to that, right? You have to raise your standards, and you have to surround yourself with the people that you serve, right? Like you've got to surround everything with that. We've got to intertwine. We call that merging the ecosystem, right? Or, Dan Sullivan would call it who, not how. Like, who do I need? Like, I don't need to know everything, but who do I need to merge with in order to make sure that who I'm serving is ultimately always getting the best, right? That's raising up your level of leadership. And in our business, it comes down to, if I want to service business owner clients, then I'm probably not going and filing in a room on Tuesday morning when some travel insurance company is there to speak, unless I'm dealing with people that travel all the time. But maybe I merge my ecosystem with somebody that actually specializes in that. And so, for me, that's what it's all about, is knowing who is our ideal client, who do we think we do our best work with, and then saying, what are their major problems? How do they build their businesses? What's important to those people? Really digging in deep and setting in deep roots with them. So that way I can say, okay, here's all the deficiencies that I come across in their game on a normal basis. And I only handle this section. But if I'm going to care for these people, like, I've got to make sure I've got people on hand that can handle all these sections, right? Or right. I need to be able to articulate that to them. So that's where that comes from.
Awesome. Wow, that's cool.
Points to Nathan for having the book, by the way.
I started it last night, actually. Nick recommended a chapter, so.
It's a good book. Here's a funny story on John Maxwell. So I came across him through a mentor, and I got on to I probably have about 17 of his books now. And this wasn't we didn't plant this question in particular, but it came up. Watched a bunch of his YouTube videos, and then I seen one day, I live in Halifax, he was in Moncton, not preaching, but speaking at a Baptist church. And I hooked off of work that day and drove 3 hours myself and sat front row and watched this guy, and it was super cool and impactful. So got a lot of time for John Maxwell and his teachings, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What books are you reading right now?
So I'm reading a book called The 48 Laws of Power.
Wow. Jeez, this is weird.
Is it Robert Greene?
It is Robert Greene, yeah. So
I over the last little bit, I've read some books that you probably wouldn't have read because they were they're what I call they're what the internet marketers would call high value content offers. So they're books written by people that's really all about, hey, I'll give you this book for free, you pay for the shipping. Really what I want is your data, sort of stuff, right? So I don't do that. I just go and find where I can buy the book, and I just buy the book, save my data, buy the book. But this one guy out of Australia who I really liked his book, his name's Ben Slater, wrote an amazing book. So whether you're a business owner or you're an advisor, it's a great book. You should probably invest the $30 or give your data and get it free. And he's a very deep thinker. Like I'd love to be the sort of thinker he is, like very good on pulling in philosophy and this and that. And I'll admit, I wasted some of my youth not really being as dedicated to studying as what I should be. So he's obviously put a lot more time in that. He's much more eloquent than I. But it got me kind of like interested in the Stoics, right? And so my Kindle comes in today, and I already know the first book I'm buying on Kindle, which is called The Daily Stoic, right?
Yeah.
Which is a thing you read like one page per day sort of thing. That guy was talking. I had come across 48 Laws of Power, picked it up, did not think it was for me. Opened it up, read the first couple pages. I was like, yeah, I don't think this book for me. Then I put it down and I started getting, it's like, I never said the words. I didn't even have my phone in chapters when I did it, so I wasn't getting retargeted or anything. But all of a sudden I started seeing this come up and people giving like testimonies to it. And then I kind of heard more about what the actual book was for. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go back and read this book. So it's been an interesting read. I'm about halfway through right now, and it's still not something that I think, it's not something where it's like got immediate application, but it does make you think on things, and it makes you think on things that have transpired in interactions with people. And I'm a very big analyzer. This is one thing you probably don't realize about me is I'm very big into tactics. Like I coached for many years of like sports and this and that. I'm very big on analyzing my life and things that go on. And so it's an interesting book from the standpoint of it's got really good philosophy behind it by like different pieces of history and people from history. It's an interesting book. But yeah, I mean, I've got you know, once one book's down and I've taken what I can out of it, I'm like usually looking to enhance things.
Yeah. That's funny.
I mean,
that's go ahead, Nathan.
I was gonna say I can feel your excitement when you're talking about books, and I was just wondering if that's where you get your energy from. Like, how do you is that how you're so excited about this industry?
So you know, I got started in, this is so true. I didn't read. I was never a good reader. I didn't even learn English until like grade 4. I was in French immersion. They realized I was illiterate to English. I struggled my entire life with reading and writing, and it was terrible. But when second year in the business, I'm kind of floundering. I'm dying. My manager knows it, and he's trying to do me a favor. But my father's in the business too, right? So he can't just cut me. But rightfully, he's realized, okay, this guy's a sinking ship. Like he's not gonna make it on his own, right? So like, I don't want to keep going and like resurrecting his career only for it to go down in a couple months. I was not the best first year student, okay, and I blame some of this on training. I blame some of this on maturity. It didn't happen to me, but happened for me. And so my manager throws me a book, right? Like I'm dying, and he throws me a book, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you read this book? Maybe it will help you out of the funk that you find yourself in right now." And I'm like, I'm pissed at him. I'm pissed, right? Like all I need you to do is help get me going again, right? That's your job as the manager, and it wasn't his job. And he throws me this book called The 1 Minute Salesman, 1 Minute Salesman by Ken Blanchard. I go home and I read it, and I was like, oh, wow, that, you know what? I think that'll get me. I think if I do this, that'll get me through here. And that started me seeing, okay, wait. Like people aren't going to just pour into me because I'm not showing them the effort. Like it's kind of like if you belong to a sports team, if you practice really crappy, people don't want to let you play, right? They don't want to pour time into you. So I started reading, but I was looking for specific things as I was reading, right? And that's evolved. So now what I do, like in coaching advisors and helping advisors, I'm looking for stuff that accelerates the advisor learning experience and scaling of their business. So that's what I look for. Do I get a lot of energy out of it? I get a lot of energy when I can process the material and I can see practical application to it.
Right.
That's what gives me energy, right? Like, I mean, helping people is what gives you typically a lot of your energy.
Right.
I like it. Same here, for sure.
Great.
It's just sort of, this is definitely a planted question. I'm curious to see how you answer this. So in the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most evolved in your life?
Oh, new belief, behavior, habit. I would say that I worked last year. I did a lot of work with a coach, great lady, and I would say that you know, recognizing, as humans, we move forward, and we work and we put our head down, and we're going. And actually, a cool book that was just written, I read this before Christmas, called The Gap and the Gain, another Dan Sullivan, Benjamin Hardy book. Really cool book. I was always living in what they call the gap. So that's the gap between where I am today and where I thought I'd be or where I want to be, right? So when we live there, we're very, very critical and negative on things, and things seem so bleak and everything seems so far away. But when we measure in the gain, so measuring from where we started to where we are now, there's a lot of gains that have happened, right? And there's a lot to learn from that. And the craziest thing is most people don't realize that we're really one decision away. We're one deal away. We're one conversation away from bridging that entire gap, right? Like, we're a lot closer than what we think we are, right? And so one of the things that, I've always been kind of I'll do the work and I'll wait for somebody to tap me on the shoulder to recognize it, right? And one of the things that we've been working on as a coach is, no, I need to proclaim more. I need to be more assertive towards stating exactly what I want and intended outcomes on here, right? That's an interesting step, because it's probably not how I was raised. But since I've been doing it, I've definitely seen some growth, and I only started doing it last year, so I can't give you 5 years worth of history on that.
Nice. I think we all, as high achievers, struggle with that. It's, I personally can relate to that comment of, being stuck in that gap in which, where you want to be, it's eventual, and you have a hard time looking back going, oh shit, man, I actually kind of did a lot already. I should be a bit more proud of myself and get through the day with that attitude, right?
Well, and Ed Milet calls it being blissfully dissatisfied, right? So I'm happy with what I have, but I'm dissatisfied that I'm not ultimately to where I want to be, right? And it's the idea of, and this is his too, it's the idea that, one day, whether you believe in heaven or whatever you believe in, and I don't care, that's not really what the nature of this is, but at some point I'll be in heaven and God reveals a mirror for me to meet the man that I could have been.
Right.
And how's that meeting go? Like, am I going to be happy because like I'm at that level, or am I going to be sad because I didn't push it the way I should have pushed it, right? So
yeah, it reminds me of the quote, what was it? Would the boy you were be proud of the man you are? Something to that nature, right? That runs through my mind frequently. And again, especially as having children and whatnot, it's even more, Nathan, if you ever get down that path, of which you don't have to if you don't want to, but it definitely is a motivation to look at your little ones and go, man, I gotta, be the best I can be and be a leader, raise my level of leadership for them and in the business, in life, right?
Because they're watching, right?
Yeah.
They're watching, and then the ultimate yardstick. They're, the footpath that you leave is the one that they'll follow, right? And so, you want to be careful in the path that you choose, right?
Yeah. Now, Brent, you kind of already told us a little bit about how you started in the industry and kind of with your father and everything like that, and how your first couple of years went. Now, I can tell you're a big education guy, and I see you've got your CLU and your CHS designations. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe even tell the audience what they are and explain how you got them, and if you're going to be pursuing any further education from there?
So I will be. So I'll just cross that one off your mind there. Okay. I also did my, back in the day, I don't hold it actively now, but I've done my EPC, so Elder Planning Counselor, which deals with the tsunami of aging that our population will face. An amazing course, not a very long course for those, but I'll tell you, it was a very impactful course. Like, there's a lot of things you just don't think of, and after you take that course, it's like the veil is lifted. You can't not think of it after that, right? So. But be careful, buyer beware. You'll be counseling your parents after you do that course. And that's a delicate scenario. So CLU is the Chartered Life Underwriter. It is probably the premier designation for insurance advisors that I can think of. I mean, there are other ones out there that are absolutely awesome, some newer ones that have come out. But basically, the CLU, is comprised of the certified financial planner courses. So you have to do those first, right? And then some people will stop and they'll write that exam. I never intended to do that because I don't really do financial planning. So I don't do like budgeting and all that stuff. And so there's 3 additional courses afterwards: advanced law, advanced taxation, and then planning for business owners in the States, right? And so that's a lot of what I do. I will say that I finished it on 2 call-outs. So I started that designation, oh God, I'm so embarrassed, about 14 years ago. And then my son started playing competitive soccer and I was coaching, and I put it all on hold because, that was just you can't get that time back, right? And I probably should have prioritized my things better and done it, but I just didn't. Instead, what I was doing was I was learning the practical application of all that was in that course. And then about 2 years ago, it was about 2 years ago, Bob Clark, an advisor here in Toronto, called me out and he said, yeah, I know you know your stuff basically, but when are you going to be professional about it and get your designation? And I was like, wow, right? I only know him off of 3 meetings. And he's like, and it wasn't that he was discounting my knowledge or value. It was a call for me to raise my level of leadership. And I was like, boom, okay, got to do it. Then, so 3 weeks goes by and I haven't done anything with it. And my friend from Advocate, Sheila Godsey, says to me, when are you going to finish your CLU? Like I looked you up and I noticed you only have these courses left to do. When are you going to finish that? And so, she pulled some strings and we opened it all back up, and I made a promise to her that I would finish it. So I can't even remember. I started it like in the fall. I was finished it by the spring, sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like I pounded out the 3 courses. And those courses really are set as a baseline or a framework for you to be able to say to people that I understand the planning process and how to take people through in a very process-driven way. And I have an advanced level of knowledge as far as like taxation and structures and everything like that goes. And it's really for people that deal with corporate clients and anybody really you could deal with for estates and stuff like that. But it has a lot of advanced stuff dealing with trusts and that. So it's dealing with, you're not doing trusts on somebody that doesn't have any money. These are usually clients that have a fair amount of dough, right? Yeah. And so they may not have a need for insurance, but they have a desire because they built something and they'd like that to be passed to the kids. And, the CRA would like to come in and take 30 to 50% of what they've spent their life building, even though they've paid taxes along the way. So what we try and do is keep as much of that in the family and cut them out for less. So that's really what, in a nutshell, I guess what that boils down to. CHS is a health, DI, CI group insurance. I actually did the RHU, which was under the American College. We severed paths with that, the Advocates and the American College. They offered up the CHS. So my RHU converted over to the CHS. And it's just to help people with the, not everybody dies. Some people only die a little bit. And when they die a little bit, it means that they're still there and the family still has to clothe and feed them. And if they haven't put the proper safety net underneath them, the living death can actually be sometimes worse than the actual death, right? So it's a really deep course and a cool course. And you'll learn more about underwriting in that course than probably any course out there. And underwriting is so I'm going to go on a bit of a rant. Our industry is doing a disservice. Like when I got in the business, there was a secondary tier company called Norwich Union. They had a guaranteed issue plan. And when your client couldn't get insurance, you turned to that. The art of underwriting, field underwriting, which is really what an insurance advisor was considered back in the day. We used to go out and ask what's called a part 2, which is all the health questionnaires, all the financial questionnaires and that. It was an art and an honor to learn that. And you could position if there was going to be a rating or you thought it might be a decline, or you learned how to package a case correctly. Nowadays, there's this whole barrage of making it easier and doing more and more simplified, where I'm seeing people recommending guaranteed issue before somebody's even gone for fully underwritten.
Yeah, I see that too.
And somebody gets ill down the road and they want to do a conversion, and you've got to take a second-rate product on that.
Yeah.
So, you take the CHS, you'll learn how to underwrite better. That is part of the stewardship of this business, is learning how to do that. And I don't blame the advisors out there. somewhere along the way, the waters have gotten muddied between carriers not talking about it and simplify, and God bless the simplified people, man. Like, they are providing really great options, much better than when I was 25 years ago. But that should not be a primary option. I don't care if you can go to a trip down into Mexico or something like that. Do the job proper. That's just my rant on that one.
I definitely agree with that, Brent. I've seen it enough, and I hear a lot, from those representatives. It's, I refer to it as A and B, and we're going to A first, and I'm not going to play underwriter. Let's see what comes back from the major carriers to make sure you have the right product that can last lifetime, versus jumping on something that's quick and easy for the advisor and makes them a buck and isn't really the best solution for the client. That's kind of my view too. I guess I agree on that for sure.
Yep.
You touched on it a bit, but with your course that I attended last year, I learned a ton about planning in the higher net worth market. So what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis, and how do you help advisors?
So that's a great question. I would say I wear a bunch of different hats because I do stuff in head office. I work with our head office teams on product development because I work with guys like you, right? And I get to know the way clients think and what they buy and why they buy and stuff like that. So we build products very thoughtfully where I am. It's not just willy-nilly. So I do some of that. A lot of what I do is counsel, right? So I'm like a paraplanner. Somebody like yourself may have a case, and you may, like, we're in different provinces, right? So you don't need me to come to that meeting, right? But you may want to bounce that case off me and see, do you have a different perspective than what I have, right? And so I'm honored that I get those calls from people to say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. And sometimes I'll say, hey, you know what? You're on the right track. A lot of times I'll look at it and say, dude, you don't have enough info here to really, like, I got a call yesterday where somebody was like, this guy's got 8 million in his holding company. What do you think we should do? And I go, what's he got the 8 million in? Like, right. Is there a call in the business for I know in your head, you're thinking I got 8 million to stretch into premium, but that's not a reality of what people do. So what do they value and what do they do with their money? So I do a lot of that, like counsel like that. Also in that role as a paraplanner, I will go client facing, right? So like sometimes it'll be, no offense, Nathan, it'll be somebody like yourself who, you've got the great white whale, or it's your uncle or something like that. And you're like, hey, my uncle's going to give us a shot, right? Or this person that I respect is going to give us a shot. And, I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, right? So we'll come in. I will tell you, and Equitable knows this. If I know we're not the deal, I don't press the deal. I got a lot of deal flow. My pipeline, I got, what's the saying? I got 99 problems, but my pipeline ain't one, right? My pipeline is usually fairly full. So there's enough business in Canada. It's amazing. And there's enough business for all companies. But if you're trying to jam the proverbial square peg in the round hole, I might get one deal out of you, but the minute I screwed you, we'll be done forever. You'll never do business with me again. So when I know we're not the deal, I'm very quick to say, I don't think we're the deal on this, right? So I do client facing as well. And then we've got, so I built this course, right? And this course has really been a labor of love of over a decade. The course was for people that want to work with business owners. Originally 10 years ago, it was all just technical content. And what I figured was people would be able to take that technical content and figure out how to scale their business with it. I couldn't have been more wrong. And what I created was really good job security, because I created dependency on people wanting to use me, right? But then you get kind of past that because you realize I can't be at every meeting for every person that comes through the course. So how do I fix the front end problem of this, right? And so you came through the course, and there's a lot of front end stuff talking about process and things that you have to develop, and it's work. It's not simple. It is easy, but it's not simple to implement. And then there's the technical cut stuff that you have to do, right? So we run this course. It's now in its third. So I used to do this live with people. So that, like, I'd fly in or drive in, and we do this live in a 2.5 hour setting, and it was cool. Then COVID hit, and that became, you unfortunately survived the COVID sessions, right? Which was me lecturing for 2.5 hours, which, like, Nathan, honestly, I do that. Afterwards, I got to book an 1.5 hours off, because I don't want to talk to a family member. I don't want to talk to anybody for an 1.5 hours because I'm going straight for 2.5.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. So you know what? Then out of frustration, I say there's got to be a smarter way, right? So what we did is we're now on version 3, which is all the actual course content we've built into an online course. So you can watch that at your leisure, do replays on it. In fact, we have students that have come through that said, "Hey, just wanted you to know this sale's coming in, and it's because I could go back and listen to this that, you know, it's funny, this accountant asked this and I had the answer on hand." Huh, great, awesome. That's exactly what it's built for, right?
Nice.
So it's a little bit of in class and a lot of online, but you know, that's a lot of what I do. It's a whole lot of Zoom these days, right? So, but and I'll give a shout out to the at the time 61-year-old broker who taught me what Zoom was and how to
Nice.
use it. So
Wow, that's cool.
yeah.
It's pretty clear that you guys are well adapted through COVID and being able to use Zoom and everything. I know that that's pretty much all we do right now. It's very effective, and it's interesting that you said that. Now, something that you mentioned earlier that I'm interested about too is that you're obviously talking to wealthy Canadians all the time and helping them out. What exactly do they do? How do they use life insurance, I guess, with their wealth? Like, how do they utilize it?
So I mean, it's that's a really deep question that could take a long time to answer, right? Because everybody does it differently.
Yeah.
What you need to get to is the heart of the value system. How have they built their wealth? So I'm going to say something that'll offend most of everybody that's ever done this job, and that's pretty much what I do really well, which is recognize that you've never made your client wealthy. Your client made themselves wealthy, right? They walk a tightrope. Our job is to figure out how insurance fits as the safety net under the tightrope, because they don't need us or our mutual fund or whatever it is, right? What they need is time, right? Unfortunately, what we can't sell them is a lease on life, to steal a Ben Feldmanism, right? And so for us, in some of the cases, we're looking at pure protection, right? Like if you pass away, we need to have a big pot of capital to come in to take care of any debts and make sure that your family get from A to B the way you wanted them to. For some people, it's about conservation, right? So I learned this one from someone else, but how four cows sold a $7 million policy by Tom Hanger, right? Which was basically you've got a farmer, and all business owners are farmers, right? All real estate entrepreneurs are farmers, right? Their cows are represented by businesses or by houses, and ultimately they want to pass those cows to the next generation. But the problem is the day you walk out the door, the very next day the CRA is walking in, and they're walking in with a butcher. And what they want to do is butcher a third to half of all the cattle, right? And they're going to call that tax. And really at the end of the day, what you want to have happen is the cows to move to the next generation so they can keep milking them, right? Because that's the whole, you work so damn hard acquiring all the cattle, that's what you want them to do. And the biggest thing is, if most farmers realize that you could take a little bit of the milk, a little bit of the profit, and put that away into this vehicle, and then on the day that the CRA came walking in, you could turn over the capital that they need, you would leave the cattle in force for the kids to keep milking them. The CRA would leave with what they're looking for, which is the tax revenue, right? And we could propel generational wealth over and over and over again, right?
Right.
And so that's really the art there, is to figure out what people are doing and figure out where they are in their process. Like not everybody's permanent insurance. Like if you talk to somebody acquiring real estate in their 30s, they want doors. They don't want capital off the table that isn't going into doors. And they don't want to, I don't care who you are, they do not want an IFA, folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do not want to tie up collateral for insurance when they want that collateral in properties, right? So those are people that are just really primed for term life insurance, to make sure their family actually get to keep what they've been working so hard to put together, right? So they still have a need, but as those people go through their seasons and they get out of acquisition and they go into that mature phase where they want to pass that to the next generation, I would say there's a lot of stewardship that has to happen along the way as well. That's when they'll look at permanent life insurance. And so having that really, what'd you call it? Tier A? Life insurance company stuff that can convert into really good stuff that you would want to own long term.
Yeah,
that's where that stuff comes in handy. Now I will tell you, here's another book reference, right? Wealth of Wisdom by Tom McCullough and Keith Whitaker. Congrats to Tom McCullough. He just sold Northwood Private Family Office to CI for an undisclosed massive amount of money, I'm sure.
Okay.
But they wrote a book called The Top 50 Questions That Wealthy Families Should Ask. It's about how family offices work, and it's about digging deeper and going to it's magical that they put a tree on the front of this, because if you can get to the roots and understand what people value, you realize it's the roots that grow the shoots that bear the fruits, right? And if we want to move that wealth to the next generation, we need to have very difficult discussions with them. And it's the difficult discussions that help families last and move on. It's the difference between the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts, right?
Wow.
Gotcha. Well, that was a great answer.
Yeah, absolutely. You joked a little bit about IFAs. Certainly they have their place in some situations, but perhaps they're oversold a little bit in the market. Outside of that, what are bad recommendations that you hear in your profession or our profession?
You know, a lot of structural stuff. So
Yeah.
dealing with corporations, you can take, I don't care what it is, you can take any brand of product, any particular product, and you can label that as the best product out there. And if you take that product and you put it in the wrong corporate like entity, and later they go to sell that entity and you've got to move it, you've got a tax disposition. And you're going to have some very angry clients, right? And so, you know, we see, you know, a fair amount of that. Where, you know, joint lasted eyes get promoted far too much. So, you know, if you're listening to this, if you have a client and they're in their 30s, they have a 50% chance of getting divorced, right? And if they get divorced and they bought a joint lasted eye too early, that thing will be a nightmare to unwind. You know, like I think you have to know your market. Once again, I think everything starts with who do you service, and then understanding what their common needs and problems and stuff are. I think that if it sounds too good to be true, it might be too good to be true. And people have a season for when things make sense for them to buy based on what it is they own and what's of value to them. And you have to dig deep on that. But tax structures are huge, man. Like, and you got to realize, if you read Dave, if you're like, if somebody's tuning in and they're like, they're one of these term and invest the different shops, and I'll leave the names out of the conversation. And you're like, well, Dave Ramsey says this and Susie Orman says this. Understand, I'm cool with term and invest the difference. If you've got a client, they've got a very small budget because they have a very low income, and they are basically a bond. They work for somebody, they make a set amount of money. They need to make massive gains in order to go the 1/3 of their life where they're not going to. So term and invest the difference probably makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But the minute your client has structures and massive wealth, those books are absolutely useless to you. And nobody writes books for, hey, here's financial planning for the person that just won the Lotto Max.
Right.
Like, it's got a very small market cap, right? On how many people you're going to sell that to.
Yeah.
You know, very few books for, I mean, there are lots of books on planning, but nothing that says, read this book and you can give your own heart surgery. Like, you can do your own planning for your business and finances and that. Like there's just not one particular great guide for that. There's like, you got to snippet it, which is why they hire teams of professionals, and which why so I tend to adopt a very family office style format, in that I want all the advisors to the table and let's have a real discussion and do some real planning for people, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
And by that, I know the answer, but you're referring to accountants, lawyers, us insurance folks, and everyone else who
stock
helps
brokerage,
those make
mortgage
decisions.
brokers.
Yeah.
You know, if they've got a family CEO, whatever they've got going on, and it depends on the levels of wealth that you get to.
Right.
You need to be at the table having open dialogue and realize that where you thought it might have gone, you may not have known some of the other tax planning measures that they were planning, like pipeline planning or something like that. And when that gets pulled onto the table, it doesn't kill your deal, it alters the deal.
Right.
Right. Ultimately, it's not about you, it's all about them. And we're looking to get the win, right? Like we're looking to get them the win. That's what it's all about. Romantic,
awesome.
Isn't it?
It is, yeah. Nice.
That's awesome. And I know we're getting close to the end here, guys. And I appreciate so far, Brent, all the things you've had to say. We got a couple more questions just before you go. One that I wanted to ask, it kind of relates back to me, but let's just say you're my age or you're in my shoes. Like, what advice or like how should I go about this? Like, what advice would you have for like a young entrepreneur, a young guy or girl like myself? trying to make a name for themselves in this industry?
So this is going to be tough, and it's gonna murder your brain, okay? Because we have this thing called the reptilian brain, and it's not going to like this, because when you get licensed in Canada, you're licensed, and Nick's heard me say this before. So you're licensed to sell everybody, from the marathon runner, like, you know, to you know, like to the couch potato, basically, right? Like, so from end to end, right? You're entitled to sell somebody from the millionaire to the pauper, right? You're entitled to sell somebody from the family business to the, you know, to the employee, right? Like, you've got the gamut of what you can sell. You've got seg funds, the super visa, everything your license allows you to sell. And so the problem is, with what I'm about to tell you, your reptilian brain's going to say, don't listen to that guy. That guy's out of his freaking mind. Okay. And so what it is pick a market that you think you can have the most influence in and learn everything about them. And now, what I didn't say to you is ignore all other markets while you're selling your business. So somebody comes along and says, hey, I just bought a house. Will you sell me mortgage insurance? Yeah, of course, right? Because you need the revenue. What I'm saying is, when you wake up on Monday morning, know the fishing pond that you're going to, know the fish you're trying to catch, so your tackle box is stocked with the right tackle, right? That you have the right bait. And so you want to go out there and just keep casting, right? Keep casting. And the other thing I would say is, with that, the game is changing in its work initially. Once you get enough capital, reinvest back in your business. Don't do this work yourself. This is not where you get paid your high value for, okay? But invest in yourself, learn how to market yourself to your ideal audience, right? And this is how I take Warren Buffett's theory of, you got to make money while you're sleeping, is you've got to have digital marketing going while you're out there selling your clients, so that it's loading up people, so that way your pipeline's not running dry. Because the number one issue that advisors face, and this came out in the last Canada Sales Congress, is they have pipeline issues, right? They have a lack of sales, but that falls back to pipeline, right? So you need something doing intros and telling people, and you need enough collateral out there to say what it is you do in plain language and how you help people. And don't write stuff so that way it pats you on the back. Anything you write, your LinkedIn ads and your LinkedIn bio, everything, tell it who you serve, what their common problems are, use some disturbing questions, and tell them how your process actually helps them bridge that gap, and you'll win the.
Okay. I appreciate that. That's great insight for sure.
That's perfect. One more question, and then we'll let you go, Brent. If you could jump on the top of a mountain and say one thing that everyone would hear, what would you say?
I'd probably say help, because I'm afraid of heights.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm just being honest, right? But
yeah.
You know, I guess what I would say is, figure out what's important to you. I mean, you're gonna go listen to people. Like, that's the awesome thing is, you're gonna go to the seminars, like, and you're gonna see things at the Canada Sales Congress. And when you're young, or you're not in your success yet, so it doesn't even matter if you're young. You could be 50 years old and still floundering, right? And you're like, oh, I should sell this. I should be into this. I should do philanthropy because this guy became very big in philanthropy, right? And what I'm saying, you need to drill it all back to, who do I like to work with? So go back, look in your clients. If you don't have clients, right? Like, so if you're just starting out, figure out who you think you'd want. If you get it wrong, being wrong just tells you that you need to recalibrate things, right? Like, you just don't have the right calibration, or you realize, hey man, the people I targeted are jerks. I don't want to deal with those people. That's okay. Start again, man. Start the whole process over again. You know, so fail forward, and figure out who you want to service, and then just don't deviate from that, right? Keep your mind focused on that, and learn all the new techniques that are coming out, because, like, the things we did 20 years ago, like, some aspects of it work, the core of it works. Being able to ask people and connect with people always will work, but there's so many new techniques on how to load people up into your pipeline, and it's just a matter of getting out of that comfort zone, because, man, putting yourself out there ain't easy, but you got to do it. Like, you got to get past it and do it, because if I Google you and I don't pull up at least 3 pieces of content or something about you that tells me who it is you do, you don't exist. You're a virtual ghost. And people don't want to go. I love this one. I forget where I learned it, but nobody wants to be patient number 1 for the plastic surgeon. Everybody wants to be patient number 100, right?
That's right.
Now, if he has enough collateral, you don't know if you're 1 or 100, right? So put out your collateral, keep your mind open, keep focused on your people, and win the game, and bring. God bless you all. You guys do such an amazing job, right? You're bringing the nobility back to this industry. I really believe it.
Wow. Thanks, Brent. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. Brent Swatuk, CLU, CHS, Advanced Case Consultant at Equitable Life. His first podcast, our third. We're so grateful to have you here, man. It was awesome to learn from you. We'll release this podcast in a couple of weeks. Anyone who watched, please don't hesitate to like, comment, subscribe, and that will help get the word out there. So thanks so much, and have a great day.